Good morning to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for today, June 1st, the first official day of the hurricane season 2025. It is a Sunday. Let's start off with the National Hurricane Center on this first day of the hurricane season to see what is going on. And luckily, nothing is expected in the Atlantic, at least, over the next 7 days. So, a quiet start to the hurricane season for right now. Although, as I said before, we're going to have to watch over the coming weeks for potential development in the Western Atlantic. Really quickly, though, in the Eastern Pacific, we do have an area of development. 40% chance that we might get something to develop over the coming week. After, of course, Alvin dissipated yesterday. Looks like the Eastern Pacific is going to stay active for the foreseeable future. The next name on the list is Barbara, and maybe we might get that soon. And also, by the way, if you're noticing something different about the Eastern Pacific graphic, it's because now the Eastern Pacific graphic is including the Central Pacific as well. So instead of the Eastern Pacific tab here just showing the map of the Eastern Pacific, the National Hurricane Center this year decided to expand their view for the Eastern Pacific to include the entire Pacific. And I find that weird because they still have the Central Pacific map here that exclusively shows just the Central Pacific, but the Eastern Pacific shows both basins. Find that a little odd and definitely going to have to get used to this map because it's much wider now. I mean, I guess it's useful because sometimes storms in the Eastern Pacific can develop and then move into the Central Pacific. Still a little weird, going to have to take some getting used to, but that's one of the many changes the National Hurricane Center is making for this year. But day one of the hurricane season, here we go. Let's start off with a look at the satellite imagery in the Atlantic. And obviously, it is a quiet first day of the hurricane season. There is nothing going on right now. Very quiet across the tropics. We have a few tropical waves in here. Looks like there's some shower activity near the islands, and then there's a tropical wave in the eastern Atlantic out here that just moved off yesterday. And I actually have the ocean analysis map to show you this. There's a tropical wave here. There's also a tropical wave near Central America. That's going to move into the Eastern Pacific. Maybe this is the area that we're watching that might potentially help something develop in the Eastern Pacific that the National Hurricane Center has highlighted. But beyond that, nothing much else occurring. Also, you have this frontal system here over the Bahamas and then off the southeast coast, and looks like that's bringing some inclement weather to Bermuda. And we're actually going to have to watch maybe off the southeast coast. At least from what I've seen, some models are showing, or at least the overnight models, were showing some sort of low pressure spinning up near the Bahamas and maybe becoming some sort of quick spin up. We tend to have these sometimes where low pressures that would break off the tail end of these frontal systems. Especially in the early season, this would happen, and sometimes they would try to consolidate and they end up becoming brief tropical storms off the southeast coast. And sometimes we get these setups in the Gulf too. So maybe we'll have to watch out for that. And I'll show you the GFS model, which did, I believe, show it overnight. And I think they do show it a little bit in the 6E. And you can see here in the Bahamas, we kind of have this frontal system here that moves eastward, and then eventually a low pressure tries to spin up near the Bahamas, and then you can see tries to develop a little bit, although at least on the 6E GFS it moves inland very quickly and doesn't have much time to develop. And then beyond that, over the next 7 days in the Atlantic, the GFS remains quiet, although you can see they do show some development occurring in the Pacific. Well, not just some development, that actually looks like a bona fide tropical system that the GFS has on the 6E in the Eastern Pacific. And obviously we have our area of interest in the Eastern Pacific as well that we're going to need to watch. But beyond the 7 day time frame, lots of talk about, once again, activity occurring in the Atlantic, especially in the Caribbean, maybe the Gulf. And I mentioned this before. Notice how we have all of this vorticity kind of bundled here, or not really bundled, but kind of stretched out all over Central America. We're going to have the Central American gyre set up which a lot of the times in the early season tends to lead to development to occur in the Atlantic and especially in the Eastern Pacific. And that's definitely manifesting so far this year. So the bottom line is as we head into this month, probably over the next 2 weeks or so, we're going to have to start watching the Atlantic more closely for when we might potentially get our first development of the season. But we're not going to have right off the gate now that it's hurricane season, and I really want to point this out because sometimes people don't understand this, and I always mention it whenever we look at the sea surface temperature anomaly map. The entire Atlantic doesn't just become active from day one of the hurricane season. In fact, here we are on June 1st, and this is the climatology map. You've probably seen this before, as I bet you a lot of people have mentioned this, but this map represents the climatology of when we typically have tropical development in the Atlantic. And here we are on June 1st, and you notice there's barely anything that occurs on June 1st. In fact, for the first 2 months of the season throughout June and July, the Atlantic really isn't all that active. We really only have, on average, 1 to 2 named storms before we get to August. And then you see by the time we get to August, activity tends to rapidly increase, especially towards the latter half of August. And then we tend to peak in activity in early September. We tend to have that very rapid increase, especially from August 20th onward. But before then, it really is not that active. That's why we always say the peak of the hurricane season is August, September, October, because if you look on this climatology map, you could clearly see those are the 3 months with the most activity. And those are really the 3 months that we really monitor the most. And obviously, we still have development in the early season in June and July, but it's not that much. But obviously, it is not zero. And of course, the areas that we do watch in June, especially the first 10 days of June, since that's where we are in right now, where those areas tend to be is once again generally in the Western Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and off the southeast coast. I should have brought a map to show generally the entire month of June where we typically watch, but it's really not that different than this. We have some areas off the southeast coast, which, as I showed you on the GFS, maybe there could be a low pressure that tries to spin up. We'll see. And then obviously we have tropical development in the Caribbean and Gulf. And a lot of it tends to come from the Central American gyres that we typically get early on in the season. And I've also mentioned that might set up as well over the coming weeks. And there's certainly some model hints, at least the long range ensembles from the GFS and a little bit from the Euro, although the Euro is not as enthusiastic, is trying to show development occur in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean and the Gulf, where we typically watch this early in the season. So it makes sense that you would think maybe they're onto something. We'll have to see, but at least for now, we're starting off quiet for the first day of hurricane season. And really quickly, just want to show you the list of names for this hurricane season. Whenever we do get our first storm, it would be Andrea, and then the next name on the list after that is Barry. And if this list is somewhat familiar to you, it's because it is familiar, because this list is the same naming list of hurricane names that we used in 2019 when we had Hurricane Dorian, except obviously because we all remember how Dorian went this year. Dorian is not on the naming list. It was retired, and its replacement is Dexter. So we'll see how Dexter ends up being, and maybe could it be a strong storm that ends up also getting booted from the naming list as well. We'll see. But the Atlantic, as you know, with these naming lists, we recycle them every 6 years. And we've now recycled the naming list, the same naming list from 2019. So we're using it again this year, with the first name on the list being Andrea. So we'll have to watch to see when Andrea develops, but I'm pretty sure it'll probably be soon. So, really quickly before I end, I want to bring this up to you. I've probably talked about it, not at length, but I've mentioned it over the last several days. And I always do this every single year. Day one of the 2025 hurricane season, I do a live stream to kind of kick off the hurricane season, and I'm doing the same this year. Join me tonight 7 o'clock Eastern time. I'm going to go live on YouTube. We're going to talk about what to expect for this hurricane season. I am not sure, but maybe I might have somebody on, one of my friends, that if you follow me for some time and you followed me last year, and I did the same live stream on June 1st. I had some people on. Not sure about it, but it's looking like that it might just be me tonight. Tune in to find out if anybody else joins. But once again, June 1st, which is today, 7 o'clock Eastern time tonight, we're going to go over what to expect for this hurricane season, including my personal forecasts for this hurricane season. So if you want to stay tuned to that, please, and you're not, especially if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please like this video, comment, and especially subscribe. Especially because now we're in hurricane season. We're going to start doing these videos, as I said, every single day from now till the end of hurricane season. So you can expect another one of these videos tomorrow. And of course, stay tuned for live stream tonight, kicking off the hurricane season, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Stay tuned for that, and I hope to see you then. With that being said, that's going to be it for today's video. Not much going on. It's only the first day of hurricane season, day 1 out of 183 days in the hurricane season. And let's see what these next 183 days are going to be like. And they sure do look interesting, but obviously we'll have to see how it all plays out. Thanks for watching today's video. Once again, if you like what you saw today, please like, comment, subscribe, share with family and friends and anybody who you think might find this content interesting, and especially subscribe if you want to stay tuned for our live stream tonight at 7 o'clock. I hope to see you all then. Till then, stay safe, peace, love, and kindness to you all. I'll see you again tonight.